Check, check, check. 1, 2.
Check, check, check.
I'm not sure what we're up to here.
All right. Do you have a catchphrase?
So I don't think I necessarily have a catchphrase, but I start every video with "Hello everyone" and "Welcome," and that's about as complex as it gets.
I don't have a catchphrase, yet there's a lot of random things that come out of my mouth from time to time that people like to adopt, and they're usually pretty weird, like I say words in the wrong order or things like that. So, but a true like coined catchphrase, I don't think I have. Maybe I should work on one.
Be safe, have fun, stay dirty.
What was your first job?
My first job, I was an usher at a movie theater, and I cleaned up the theaters after people got wild and threw their popcorn and soda everywhere. I would come in and clean that up. I actually enjoyed it. It was actually kind of fun because you get the end credits rolling, so there's music playing. Mission Impossible 3 had just come out, so you'd kind of roll in with your broom and your little, I don't know, bucket to scoop up crap, and do some, some sweet MI3 moves to get in there, clean it up, and get out, complete the mission.
My first real job where I got a paycheck was working at a Cinemark movie theater as a ticket sales representative. And basically I got shoved in a box for 7 hours and sold movie tickets, all for cash, by the way. This was way back before the movie theater took credit cards.
Like in the 1900s?
Like in the 1800s, actually. It was even before then. I'm surprised they even had this movie theater, to be fair. The technology wasn't even invented yet.
My first job was a grocery bagger, and it was at a grocery store that was in my small little town. And the manager was totally crooked, and I remember not only did he get fired, but I think he was indicted after the fact. I had nothing to do with it, but I remember one of the lessons he taught me, because at that time plastic bags were becoming a thing. You could still get paper or plastic. So he was telling me that a paper bag costs a nickel, and these plastic bags cost a penny. So you better be using these plastic bags as much as possible. And then he proceeded to take a 6-pack, put it in the plastic bag, and start ripping holes in the bottom, showing that the 6-pack would still stay in it, whereas if you tore the paper bag, it would just fall right out. So those were lessons learned from my first job.
If you won the $100 million Powerball today, what would 1 year from now look like?
Ooh, what am I doing with my life if I won $100 million in a year?
Yes.
I think I'd probably be in some random country, wandering around, doing whatever I want to do, exploring the world. Maybe on a boat in the ocean, checking out some coral reef or something. Just wandering the world and checking out all of what nature has to offer. That's what I'd be doing.
So, no more YouTube channel?
Oh, I think I would continue YouTube channel, but I probably would post once a month because that was all I need to do, and play with a car every now and then. Yeah, I'd have nice cars, but I think I'd explore a lot.
Woo!
It would probably look pretty similar. I don't know, I might pay someone to come clean my house. My garage might be more organized. And, as I say all those things, I think that's probably just a pipe dream. It probably would still be a mess.
Money doesn't really motivate me. I like security, and I pretty much have that now. So I'd probably do some investments, definitely I'd probably be a philanthropist in the best way possible. I'd focus on automotive education in our schools and those types of things, and try to help young aspiring technicians get into the field and do well. That's probably what I'd end up doing. Also, make sure my kids got a chance to have the opportunities that they could have. However, I'm a firm believer in making your kids work for things, because that way they understand the value of it. So in other words, not giving them everything, but certainly giving them something to fall back on. Definitely take care of my wife. She's been putting up with me all these years, so pretty much whatever she wants.
What made you want to start a YouTube channel?
I started a YouTube channel because I was at an internship where I didn't have anything to do, and that was my only internship in college, and so that was the only experience I was going to have when I was applying for jobs. And so I made a YouTube channel so I could have something else that I could talk about that showed that I was passionate and interested about engineering, and I spent my free time thinking about it and, working on my own project. But yeah, it was just as hopefully to get a job kind of thing.
I sort of started the channel, obviously not by accident, but there's a specific way that you have to change the tire on a Volkswagen, and if you don't use the jack right, it is pretty dangerous. So my first video was was about how to change a tire on a Volkswagen, and it was me with no lighting, no audio, my wife holding my 3GS iPhone, me yelling at the phone to try and get good audio, and yeah, the rest is history. It actually did pretty well for such a terrible video.
Well, I didn't want to get a real job. I had lost my job as an auto mechanic in a very screwed up kind of way, and I had been doing video production on the weekends and things. I had my video production company, and I was doing weddings, events, some corporate work, things like that, and I really enjoyed video. But when I lost my job, it was like 2007, 2008, and starting a video production company at that time, it wasn't really doing all that well because not a lot of people were spending any money on video production. But I was watching YouTube, and a guy, David's Farm was his channel, and he was bragging because he was holding up a check that he got from YouTube for a month's worth of revenue. It was $7,000. And at that time, I didn't see anybody on the internet that was doing like real how-to automotive. I mean, as far as David's Farm, he was famous for doing cold start videos. He'd go out and start something in the middle of the winter, and those did really well. And he also just goofed around on he had like field cars that he'd do different stuff with it and have fun with, and he had some friends that would come over and help him out, that type of thing. So he wasn't really serious, and every once in a while he'd post a repair video, but he wasn't really serious about doing it. The only person at the time that I can think of that was doing that was Scotty Kilmer. So I wanted to approach it with my background in video production, because the videos that I did see, they were poorly lit, the sound was bad, all these things, and I felt like I could use my automotive knowledge and my knowledge of producing good video to make a channel. And the rest is where I'm at now. That was January 2009.
Do you think college is important?
Do I think college is important? I would say yeah, and I think I would also say that I just think in general education is important. So I don't think it necessarily has to be college that is the method of getting that education, but I think all progress, pretty much period, comes from education. So I think education is important, college is one of the forms of it, and as a result of that, I say yes, college is important. But there's many ways to become educated.
I think for the right person, college is important. There are definitely some professions that I want people to have advanced level training, like doctors and whatnot, but I don't think college is important for everyone. I don't think that everyone should go. I know had I went to traditional college, I probably would have either dropped out or been kicked out very early in my collegiate career, because it's just not something that's for me.
No, I don't. I think learning how to learn is important. But as far as automotive is concerned, I highly recommend an automotive education, mainly because modern vehicles in particular have a lot of systems that are electronic. And if you don't understand electronics and how they integrate with one another and how they integrate with mechanical systems, you're at a real disadvantage. So it's going to take you longer to find a job, you get paid a lot less. And I hear people all the time come to me and say, well, I can apprentice somewhere, do that kind of thing. And I'm not saying you can't do that. I'm saying that road's a lot more difficult. And from, say, a shop owner's perspective, somebody comes in and they've made the effort, and they've gone to school, and they're looking forward to learn, and they're looking to further their education as far as automotive. I'm going to look at that person more than I'm going to look at the person who's really motivated and wants to help, because my fear with the person who's really motivated, who doesn't have the education, is that with the best of intentions, they try to do something and maybe they mess something up because they don't understand how the system is supposed to work. That's my primary concern in those situations.
What was your very first YouTube video, even if it wasn't on your channel?
Oh, well, I don't remember what my very first was. I know what my first was for my channel, and that was, what is the purpose of a turbocharger? That was my first. It was me in an apartment with 3 roommates, with poorly lit room, a crappy camera, my head cut off halfway in the video. I did everything right.
How did the video go? Was it a success?
Actually, it was a success, and it probably has over 100,000 views. Like, I feel like it did pretty well. It didn't, it wasn't initially like a ton of views, maybe 1,000 in the first couple months or so, but it did enough that it was kind of addictive of like, yeah, I want to do more of these, you know?
Is it still there?
Yeah, it's still there.
My first video was that video about changing a tire. It was the first one, and it was the only one for quite some time, probably 2 years before I did a second one.
Oh, wow. I used to have a YouTube channel called ICK69. This was a few years. I started in, I think, 2006. It was pretty early in YouTube because I was into video production. And I'm trying to think of what the first one was. It might have been something about my art, because originally I went to art school and I wanted to be an artist, and that didn't work out so well. So I went to school for special effects makeup and, you know, just doing, you know, movie stuff. And that didn't pan out. So I had a lot of artwork and things. So I think it was a video about the artwork that I had.
Is it still there?
No. The channel ICK69, funny enough, I left it with like 100 subscribers and I shut the channel down. I ran it for a couple of years and I tried a bunch of different things to try to get views up and that kind of thing, and it never really got off the ground. So I'd said a week before I was going to take the channel down, I said 1 week I'm going to take this channel down. So I posted the video, and after that video was posted and I let it run for like a day or so, the next day I pulled the channel and it went away forever. But the odd thing was I got more subscribers in that week than I ever did the entire time. So I got like 50 of those 100 subscribers in that week when I said I was going to shut my channel down.
What do you think will happen to us as automotive YouTubers in 20 years as driverless cars take over the world?
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating to think about driverless cars. I think what's cool about when we live right now is like, this is the golden age of cars right now, because we got into them when they're like wicked powerful. I mean, we're driving 707 horsepower cars today. They're wicked powerful, they're super safe, and it's just after we've gotten out, like, you know, cars used to be dangerous. When you get in a wreck, you're like, have high chance of dying, not very powerful, not very quick, not much grip. Tires are amazing today. So everything's perfect now, and everything's about to start tanking as we go to autonomous. As far as a joy standpoint, like all the joy is going to be removed from the automotive world if we're not driving our own cars. I think in 20 years, I think people will still be driving cars. I think it's going to be slower than, you know, we all perhaps think, but maybe it will come around quickly. I mean, they do say that the cars we're in today might be the last car you ever buy, and I think that's kind of sad to think about. Makes me want to go buy more cars.
Well, I think we can just create autonomous videos so that, like, we don't have to do the work. It'll be the mirror of autonomous cars. We'll have autonomous automotive YouTubers.
Is that a joke?
Yeah, it's totally a joke. Do you want a serious answer too? In 20 years, you know, the cars are still going to be on the road. Obviously, what we do is going to be different. These type of vehicles probably aren't going to have the need to be worked on by an owner. I think vehicle ownership is going to change dramatically in the next 5 years, and people are going to move away from owning a vehicle to buying access to a vehicle, be it autonomous or not. The autonomy thing is definitely something that's going to happen, and it's going to happen quick, but it's not going to be an evasive, encompassing thing like a lot of people are scared of. But I think what's going to change more is definitely the difference between now, where we own our vehicles and we pay for maintenance and it's always in our driveway, it sits 90% of the time, to us buying access to a vehicle. Autonomous car, you want to rent a hot rod for the weekend, well, you just dial it up on your app, on your phone, and the car drives itself to your location. So that's going to be different, and of course that's going to change how we do things. And, you know, the automotive YouTuber space is going to be very different, and it may be bigger, it may not exist at all in
How can you have an autonomous hot rod?
I would say Tesla does a pretty good job of that.
You know, that's a really good question. I think there'll always be some form of YouTube or some form of self promotion. Promotion's not the word. Self-producing people like YouTubers. As far as auto repair goes, things are always going to break, but I think that this generation's willingness to fix things on their own or solve problems like that on their own is pretty low with a lot of them, at least from what I've seen. So I think there'll be less people wanting to do it, but I think there'll be a lot of people wanting to be famous on YouTube because what, whatever skills that they have, they may want to showcase them so that they can become a YouTube star. I think people are more interested in that than what content they're producing.
Perfect.
Hey, that's my car.
What was your very first car?
My first car was a 1999 Acura GS. It's the base 1.8 liter, no VTEC. It was fun. It was a good first car. It burned a ton of oil. It burned 5 quarts traveling across the country when I moved from North Carolina to Oregon. So I replaced all of the oil that was in it getting across the country. But it was a solid first car. It always ran, started up. It just burned a lot of oil.
My first car, oddly enough, was a 95 Jeep Wrangler.
What? Seriously?
Seriously.
Did you like it?
I loved it. I loved that damn Jeep. Off-road capabilities, convertible. What more could a boy want?
A 1972 Galaxy 500. Had a 351 Windsor. My dad used it as his winter car, and he actually gave it to me when I was 15, and it was sitting out in the backyard. He gave me the keys. I couldn't drive it, but he gave me the keys, so I would sit in it and listen to the radio for like a year before I could actually drive it. And then the first time I went to drive it after I got my license and everything was all legal, I was pulling out of the driveway and I stepped on the brakes, and one of the brake lines brought it away. I lived in Western New York, so there's a lot of rust. So that's why we had a winter car. So you didn't drive your good car during the winter because you knew you were pretty much sacrificing it to the salt gods. So that's what I ended up with, and I just remember peeing brake fluid all the way out the driveway as I left. But that was the genesis of my love for cars, if I'm honest, because I loved working on that car. I loved tinkering with it. I mean, it was an older car, big engine compartment, and you could get to everything. I remember I went in and I put a timing chain in it, thinking that was the reason why it was running bad. And the only problem was just a condenser inside a distributor was all it was. So I went through all the trouble to rip the whole front of the engine apart, which I enjoyed, but I totally missed the mark as far as my diagnosis of what the problem was. But I love that car. And in fact, I had 2 other ones since. I bought one when I was in Pittsburgh for like $500, and I always wanted to fix one up and make it into a sleeper hot rod kind of thing. And then about 6 or 7 years ago, I also had another one that I put a 460 out of a 69 Thunderbird into. And that one went pretty good, but the handling and the brakes were kind of junk. And I ended up selling that because after I lost my job, I pretty much needed money to buy food, so that went away. And now I built a Fairmont.
What is most important in life?
What is most important in life? I think happiness is the most important thing in life, and I think happiness tends to come from experiences and experiences with other people. So I think truthfully, like, it is fun to get in fun cars like this, but what makes this event really fun is the fact that we're doing it with all of our YouTuber buddies. So experiences shared with people, to me, brings a lot of joy, and I think happiness is the purpose of life. And so, the biological answer, I guess, would be to reproduce, but I think happiness is going to be my answer.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for letting me chat with you and go through these questions with you. It's been fun.
This is something that's, is everybody's own journey to figure out what's important to them. For me, it's family, it's friends. Those are 2 of the most important things, experiences. But that's definitely a question one must answer for themselves.
Health, good health, family, friends. Those are the most important things. But I think people truly take their health for granted. And I have a unique perspective on this because I'm not exactly sure why, but I collapsed a lung once, and I was at work. And I worked half a day, and I used to smoke at the time. I remember sitting there, my chest was hurting, and I was smoking a cigarette thinking if I should go to the hospital or not. Well, I got to the hospital, and they did an x-ray, and they said, well, you collapsed the lung, and we're going to have to put a chest tube in you, and it's going to hurt. And if a doctor looks at you and says something's going to hurt, trust them, because it hurt a lot. And I was in the hospital for a week, had to have surgery. But it really struck me how one little hole in my lung completely took me out. And there's so many things like that. My wife has Crohn's, and my daughter has morning glory syndrome, which is a condition with her eye, and she's basically blind in one eye. And she has a saying, everybody has something. So I think a lot of people do deal with health issues, but I don't think that they understand or they sort of take for granted their good health when they're out and doing things, and they might complain about not having money or the latest and greatest Xbox games or whatever. But the fact that you can get up and you can breathe and you can walk around and, you know, on your own free will is a gift. And I think that's above all else what's important.
Bye.
Fiat 124, a Barth Spider, all the names.
It's a mouthful. There's a lot to it.
I love the desert. It's so, I don't know, it's so lonely, but for some reason I find that so comforting. It's so beautiful.